Question in the front, but you can't hear in the back, was where does all this greed come from? My own view is that Bush and his gang create an atmosphere of greed. You know, what they've done is they take a situation, which is globalization, and they're clear winners in globalization. I mean, people who have a lot of money, that capital goes to the place that's most productive, and now it can go anywhere in the world. And those people are doing very, very well. Most of America is not. What Bush has done is he's taken those people's winnings and he's made them bigger and bigger and bigger. He gives them tax cuts. He gives them breaks. They pay 15% capital gains tax when their secretaries are paying a higher rate on their earned income. He enters into trade agreements that benefit them but don't benefit most of America. And then he takes away from most ordinary Americans the tools to let them do well. Access to college, unionization, raising, all those things that I talked about a few minutes ago. It's backwards from what we ought to be doing. Sure. We ought to be, prosperity is not worth anything for the country if there are only a few people taking part in it. Prosperity needs to be available for everybody, and everybody needs to be sharing in the prosperity. At least that's what I believe. Yes, ma'am. How about right here? You worked your way all the way up here to ask your question.
Yes, I did. Thank you. I wrote it down so I wouldn't mess it up.
Okay.
Senator Edwards, I heard last week of George Stephanopoulos that you're the candidate with all the meat on the issues. How do we make sure that message gets passed along to the voters?
Well, I just want to say, I don't want to break my arm and pat myself on the back, but it is true that you hear a lot of rhetoric about change, high, lofty language. I think most Americans, when they hear that language, it doesn't mean a thing to them. I mean, the question is, what are you actually, in specific terms, prepared to do? And I'll go through every single big issue facing this country. I was the first person to lay out a specific universal health care plan. The first person to lay out a specific energy global warming plan. The first person to lay out a comprehensive plan to end poverty. The first person to lay out a detailed plan to send kids to college. The first person to lay out a trade policy that will actually work for America. The first person to lay out a tax reform idea. The first person to lay out a global strategy on global poverty, spread of disease, and the most aggressive on what we need to do on the issue in Iraq, on the war in Iraq. None of those things are an accident. I've been working on them and thinking about them for a long time. But it is important for voters in New Hampshire. They're not superficial, as everybody in this room knows. I mean, they're looking for very specific answers to their questions. They want to know what you're going to do about all these things. Immigration. I didn't talk about immigration, but I have a very specific proposal about immigration. Whatever the issue is, we have to, and this is the way things happen here, we have to, by word of mouth, and by my being here and Elizabeth being here, make it clear to people that this is a campaign with meat, that it is based on depth and substance, that we have real ideas, that we don't blow into town, give a pretty speech, and leave, that I am here to talk about the specifics, the substance, and I'm here to answer your questions. But we need all of you to tell your friends and neighbors the same thing, because that's what will matter. In the early stages, it's glitz and glamour. It's who comes in with their big entourage, and who are the TV cameras following. We know what's going to happen at the end. What's going to happen at the end is voters in New Hampshire are going to take a very hard look at these candidates. And they're going to decide who's ready to be president. They're going to say who's got the substance and the specifics, and who can actually win in the general election. And you're looking at the guy that can do all this stuff.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Back here in the back.
That be me?
It's for me.
Now I'm pointing over here, but I'll come over there in a second. Yes.
Senator, you have a fairly progressive agenda that you would like to get through as a Washington outsider. Senator Clinton has a fairly progressive agenda that she wants to get through as a Washington insider. What do we do with that?
I can tell you exactly what to do with it. Here's what let me add. I think I know what the question is you're asking. My answer is that you cannot, if you defend the Washington system, if that system worked, we'd have universal health care. If that system worked, we would have a serious global warming policy in America. If that system worked, we wouldn't have spent a decade trying to get the minimum wage raised. If that system worked, we wouldn't see the problems with NAFTA and trade policies that have cost millions of American jobs. The way Washington works is the people with the money play, and they have enormous influence on the system. Senator Clinton's position is, I will work with those people to bring about change. It is a fantasy in my judgment. It cannot be done. You have to take them on. I respect her. She's a fine person, and she's a very good senator. And she's very smart and hardworking. She deserves credit for all that.
She's a professional politician.
Well, you said that, not me. But my belief is that there is an enormous difference in taking on and changing the system that I think is corrupt and defending it. I do not defend that system, and I will not defend it. I can't defend that system to people in New Hampshire. I can't defend it to my father, who worked in a mill all his life. He has no voice in that system. He has no chance at all. I mean, we need a president that will bring... The people who believe in the system that exists there now, with lobbyists and corporations, we don't want to... Do we really want to trade corporate Republicans for corporate Democrats? Nothing's going to change. It's going to be exactly the same thing. We have to take the power away from these insiders. And that is the fun... You're asking the choice. You just raised what I think is the fundamental choice that are going to be left with voters here in New Hampshire. I think at the end of the day, they're going to be asking themselves that question. John Edwards wants to be the outsider who brings about change by changing the system. Senator Clinton wants to be the insider who works with the system to bring change. And that's going to be a fundamental choice for voters in New Hampshire. I do not believe you can bring about the change this country needs by working with a system that's corrupt and doesn't work. I don't.
Now, what criteria will you use in selecting your running mate, and of your current contenders, which one or two come closest to them?
The question was, for those of you who can't hear, he bragged about my taste in choosing my wife. I take full credit for that. I don't know why she's still hanging around with me, but I do take full credit for that. The vice presidency. Can I expand your question just a little bit to also talk about the cabinet? Because I think they're both very important. I'll talk about both. The vice presidency. My criteria is I need somebody that I can trust and who I also believe believes in the same vision for America that I believe in. Because if they don't, because if something happens and I can't finish my term, I think that's the vision America has voted for president. And so that person needs to be immediately capable of stepping into the presidency and fulfilling that vision. So that's primarily what I'm looking for. Somebody I can trust and somebody who believes in the same things for America. And I have made a list, to answer your question, and I have no intention of telling you who's on it. The same is true with the major cabinet positions. I have gone through each, made a list of people that at least at this moment I'm considering. I'm looking for something different there. There I'm looking for the most capable, most competent people, strong, independent-minded. I do not want to be surrounded by yes people. You know, we've seen what happens with Bush when they have a bunch of yes people around him. I want people who will challenge me. I want people who will say, you're wrong about this. You don't know what you're talking about. This is what you don't know. That's what I'm looking for. Strong, independent-minded, competent. And I know this is dangerous to say in a room of Democrats. They don't have to be Democrats. Not for those cabinet positions. I mean, I will consider Republicans. In fact, there's some on the list that I've made already. I'm looking for the most capable people I could find and the people I think will do the best job for the country. Those are things.
My name is Cynthia Onegin. I've seen you before when you ran the first time.
Yes, ma'am.
My question is, with all of the things that needs to be done, where do you begin to turn the tide back? And how do you do it in the first term?
Yeah. The question was, with all the things that need to be done, where do you begin to turn the tide back? I think you have to set priorities. There are hundreds of things that need to be done. And my view is the priorities, at least my priorities, I'll tell you what mine are. My priorities are health care, universal health care. I think our health care system is so dysfunctional, and it's destroying the lives of millions of
But
Americans.
can I interrupt?
Yes,
one
ma'am, of
minute?
course you can.
How do you get the insurance companies to back off from running healthcare?
All right, let me talk about that then. Look, I told you my priorities. She had a follow-up question, which was, but I didn't get far into the answer. That's good, though. You didn't want to hear a long-winded answer. My priorities, and then her second question was, how do you get the insurance companies to back off so they're not running health care? Priorities, health care, energy/global warming, creating a more equal playing field so that not just rich people are doing well, that everybody gets a real chance, and restoring America as a force for good in the world. Those are the four biggest priorities. Now, health care. Here's what I tell you exactly. I tell you very exactly what I would do. The first day in office, I would bring over the leadership in the House and the Senate, Republican and Democratic, and I would say to them, here's my universal health care plan. But I say to you all right now, nobody made me the God of health care knowledge. You know, the only requirement I have is that it be universal. If you want to argue about that, we have nothing to discuss, because I will have universal health care in this country. If they want to talk, but if they have different ideas about how to do it, what the process should be, you know, those kinds of things, I'm wide open to that. Wide open to that. Then I would walk out on the White House lawn, and I would say to America, I wasn't just talking a few minutes ago when I said the real power is in the country. I would walk out and say to America, we need universal health care, here's why, and here's what I'm proposing we do. And then I would say, now let me warn you right now what's going to happen. It's going to probably start tomorrow. You're going to see millions of dollars spent on television, on radio, in newspapers to defeat this universal health care plan. Every time you see one of those ads, you ask yourself one question. Who's paying for this? Because I'm going to tell you in advance who's paying for it. The people who are charging you billions of dollars for your health care. That's who's paying for it. They have a lot of money invested in making sure they can continue to charge you whatever they want. Drug companies, when you go to the pharmacy to pay for your medicine, they don't want universal health care. They want to keep having you pay through the nose for the medicine that keeps you alive. You know, sooner or later, we, America, we're going to have to stand up to these people. I'm willing to stand up with them. I've stepped up to them. And I need you to stand with me. Are you willing to stand with me? Are you willing to stand with me to have universal health care in this country? Because we need you. I tried to call right back here once before. Yes.
I'm actually raising my hand.
Yes.
Hi.
Yes.
Hi. This is Claire, my partner, 15 years.
Yes.
We've been together for 15 years. We live in the state of New Hampshire. We do not know any other families like ours. We have 2 small children. We live openly a lesbian life. How are you going to protect us federally to allow us equal rights? You have equal rights for everything else. But for gay and lesbian families, we do not have equal rights. We
I agree with
actually
that.
pay more to live here because we pay double taxes.
Of course you do.
We don't have health insurance because we're both small business owners and we can't buy it because it's too expensive.
Right.
Our children every day worry that someone's going to say, who's your real mom? There's a lack of education overall. There needs to be money for PSAs to say, hey, we don't go up to people with different skin colors and we're not rude and say really horrible things. Someone needs to pay for some education to just get some word out there that says, hey, you know, knock it off.
That says, hey, you're great Americans too.
Yeah.
That says that.
But
And
I want to know
I can tell
what
you,
you're going to do.
I'll tell you exactly what I would do. I'm a very strong supporter of equal rights, strong supporter of civil unions, and the recognition by the federal government for you, for the 2 of you, every benefit in the federal list of benefits. There are about 1,100 of them. I mean, everything from Social Security, to tax benefits, to adoption, to immigration. I mean, every single law that applies to couples would apply to you.
So why do we call that marriage?
Now you're to the more difficult question. My own personal view is I don't personally support gay marriage, but But I support ending the substantive discrimination that's going on against gay and lesbian couples in this country. And can I just go one step further? Beyond having those substantive rights available to you, I think we also need to get rid of DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act. I think we also need to end Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which was wrong from the first day, incredibly discriminatory. And it's embarrassing that we still have a don't ask, don't tell policy in the United States military. It needs to be brought to an end. I will end it as President of the United States. And I don't think the federal government, either by constitutional amendment or any other way, should be telling states, communities, or religious institutions, churches, what marriages they should bless and not bless. That should be left completely up to them. And I think all the substantive rights that go with the two of you being a couple should be available to you. That's what I'm for. I'm being very direct and straight with you about that. You're welcome. This gentleman right here. And thank you very much for your question.
You're welcome.
We talk about getting out of Iraq. What about Afghanistan?
I'm not for getting out of Afghanistan. Did you all hear the question? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have remembered. You're talking about getting out of Iraq. What about Afghanistan? My own view is Afghanistan would be in a lot better shape if George Bush had stayed focused on the people who attacked us on September 11th instead of going out. What's happening in Afghanistan, of course, is the Taliban's reemerged. They're gaining power, particularly in the south. The heroin trade, the poppy trade, poppy fields are going up dramatically. So it's a very unstable country right now. And America's there, some of our NATO friends are there, but because of the instability that exists in Afghanistan today, I think we might need to do two things. One is put pressure on the other NATO countries to increase their presence and meet their responsibilities, which they're not doing. And we might need to have some additional American troops in Afghanistan, at least until it stabilizes. So I'm for getting out of Iraq. I'm totally for getting out of Iraq. But I think Afghanistan is a different story. Because I think when we went into Afghanistan, we actually went after the people who attacked us on September the 11th. And I supported that then. I still support it. Many of you know this already. I voted for this war in Iraq. I was wrong to vote for this war in Iraq. I should never have voted for it. But I think Afghanistan is a different story. You're welcome. I'm going to do one more question, and then I'm going to stop. How about this gentleman right here?
As we get out of Iraq, though, what do we do about making sure the country doesn't blow up?
It's a good question. Well, as we're getting out of Iraq, what do we do to make sure the country doesn't blow up? Well, the first thing I'd say to you, we should start by the president being honest. And anybody who tells you that they know what's going to happen in Iraq is not being honest. We don't know what's going to happen. The choices are bad. And we're in a very, very difficult place. I think when this Petraeus report comes out, what we're going to see is a lot of focus on whether certain benchmarks have been met, whether there's been in particular areas some reduction in the violence. It will not address the big underlying question, which is, has there been any political problems? Because without Sunni and Shia reaching some kind of agreement, there cannot be stability in Iraq. It can't happen. So my view is that they've had years now to try to make political progress. They've made absolutely none, in my judgment. And my view is the way we shift responsibility to the Sunni and the Shia is we make it clear that we're leaving. The way to make it clear that we're leaving is to start actually leaving. And I would take 40 to 50,000 troops out immediately. I would continue to bring them out, combat troops, over a period of time while I was working with the Sunni and Shia to try to reach some political compromise. And I'd have all our combat troops out in about 9 or 10 months. And then I would engage the Iranians and the Syrians, all the countries in the region, but particularly the Iranians and the Syrians, into helping stabilize Iraq. Because both those countries, especially if America's not occupying, have an interest in a stable Iraq. Now let me get to the harder question. What happens if our troops are leaving or after they're gone, if the war starts to spread outside of the borders of Iraq? It's a very difficult problem. You know, we do need to maintain a presence in the region. I spoke about Afghanistan just a minute ago. We probably need a rapid deployment force in Kuwait. We need a naval presence in the Persian Gulf. But it's difficult to contain civil war. Historically, it's been a very difficult thing to do. There are things that we can do, though. Us and the rest of the world, not just us. We can set up buffer zones around the borders. You can move people out of population centers. There are things that are reasonably effective. In addition to that, the most difficult question: what happens if America leaves and genocide breaks out? What happens if the Shia start to systematically eliminate the Sunni? Now, my view is we should be planning with the international community right now for that possibility. George Bush is not prepared for anything bad happening in Iraq. You know, we know that bad things could happen. We have to be ready for them. And we should not be doing this alone. You know, it's one thing to try to get people, no country's going to help us in Iraq right now. They think it's Bush's war, it's America's war. They don't have any interest in it. But when America's gone, if there's a genocide, then it becomes at least more similar to what we see happening in Western Sudan and Darfur. Then it becomes an international humanitarian crisis. And I think we can get the world to respond. But I think we have to, as you go through each of those levels, the President of the United States has an absolute responsibility to be prepared for each of those possibilities. And those are the things that I would do.